Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Underhill with the Main Island Conservancy. I work here as a biologist.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I work here as a stewardship coordinator.
Sorry we couldn't join you live today, but we look forward to meeting everyone in person on Galliano and watching your presentations. We're going to go through a presentation about our project right now, which is Hedgerow Farm Wetland Restoration. So I'll share my screen. So this has been a great project to work on. It's my first big wetland restoration project. And so it's been a learning experience for me. And I'm really interested in getting everyone's feedback and doing some brainstorming about how we're gonna, where we're gonna take the project next. We're 3 years into the project. The project is on private property owned by landowners Kristine Weber and Peter Robinson, who have been active participants in the restoration project. The restoration site is located within an active working farm. And so there's been some considerations in how we implement actions associated with the project and finding a balance between these two land uses. I first visited the site in 2013 with the previous landowners who at the time were managing the property primarily for agriculture, exclusively for agriculture. So the wetland site itself had about a century's history of efforts to maximize the grazing land and hayfields. And when the new owners, Peter and Kristine, took ownership, we began a collaborative effort to restore a portion of the property. We identified some goals primarily around connecting the existing remnant wetland habitats with each other and the surrounding upland forests. And in order to accomplish that, we were going to convert some of the edges of around the wetland that are currently hayfields into upland forest communities. We're going to exclude deer from the restoration site, and we're going to restrict the outflow, the ditch outflow from the wetland in order to restore previous water levels. And so our main focus area is there in red, and the idea was to create continuous habitat that would connect to large blocks of continuous forest and wetland habitat. And so the actions that we took that I'll go through briefly here, one was to create 2 deer exclusion areas shown there in red, 0.8 and 5 hectares in size. We applied a rough and loose soil treatment as prescribed by Dave Polster in areas that were previously under hayfield production, shown in green. And we constructed a weir to restrict water at the outflow ditch. And we did a whole bunch of planting of red alder and other species. And so the rough and loose treatment went really well. And I look forward to talking in more detail with you guys when we have more time about some of the successes, challenges, and failures around applying the rough and loose and the resulting invasive plants and success with plantings. The fence was constructed, it's a 1.6 kilometer deer fence, and that was constructed by hand out of 10-foot T-posts and 8-foot polyethylene fencing attached to the ground by 12-inch ground stakes and attached to the fence posts using zip ties. It's been very effective. It was cost effective, resource effective to install. And I can talk more detail about what materials we use and all that kind of thing. The planting, we've focused primarily in the areas that were rough and loose, and the goal was to try and establish a shaded canopy of red alders as quickly as possible to prevent what we knew was going to be an influx of invasive plants. We also planted quite a few different wetland shrubs around the wetter edge of the wetland, as shown here. And then we also did quite a bit of live staking with pink spirea, red osier dogwood, and Pacific willow in the more flooded areas. And we've had pretty good success in most areas with the red alders. Some challenges in the wettest sites, and some challenges in the driest sites. And so that's kind of an ongoing thing. But in general, we've done pretty well with the alders. And we're on our way to establishing this transition of vegetation all the way from the permanently flooded areas of the wetland and leading up into this kind of wetter forest, early succession plant community dominated by red alders. In terms of restricting the outflow, the wetland is basically located in a bowl. So we have lots of inflow from different directions, but just the one outflow located right here. And this area in blue was the peak flood as recorded in 2018. And so our goal was to extend the period of this, what was transient flooding, to stay wetter throughout the summer without increasing the area that it was flooded, because there is hayfield and pasture lands around the wetland. And so this is a picture of the outflow here during the dry season. And as you can see, during peak season, it actually, even though it's quite a sizable ditch, it can't handle the volume of water that's going through. And so we designed a weir that we were going to build out of concrete that would allow for a panel that could be taken out during the peak season and put back in the summer to hold back water. And so we hired a professional construction crew and helped them out with our staff and volunteers, and the landowner, Peter, was a big help in this as well. The end result was this concrete weir as envisioned. And we left the panel out. This was just constructed last fall. So we just went through our first spring and summer of having the weir in place. We put the temporary panel in March last year, and we had great success with it. It ended up flooding about 2.2 hectares that was previously dry by the end of May. And it's had just a huge impact on the vegetation, and we're anticipating that trend is just going to continue in the next few years. And also in terms of retention, the water stayed, and this picture was just taken a few weeks ago. So over about 1.75 of those hectares, we've created a permanent flooding situation. So the site hasn't seen these water levels for over a century. It's been pretty cool. And before I pass it on to Katie, I just want to talk a little bit more about some of the areas of our site are dominated by a monoculture of reed canary grass. And some of the wetter edges of those sites have reduced in percent cover from 85% to 68% due to flooding. But in some of the other areas, we've also experimented with some live staking and cardboard mulch. So this is a picture of the planting boxes that were left over from the red alder plugs, and a mixture of Pacific willow and red osier dogwood cuttings. So the idea was just to try and create these islands of native shrubs in amongst and break up that monoculture. Preliminary results show that Pacific willow was extremely successful, and our plan is to do more of this in this coming winter. But I'm interested to hear more about others' successes with reed canary grass management. And with that, I will pass it on to Katie.
There we go. Can you see my screen, Rob? Perfect. All right, so in the rough and loose sections, or the areas that were treated with rough and loose, there are a lot of invasives that have popped up. There's Himalayan blackberry, cutleaf blackberry, bull thistle, Canada thistle, dock and buttercup. And we're treating some of these, and one of them is in this picture here. You can see one of the staff removing blackberries by digging them out. We want to try to get the root system out. We've also been actively managing bull thistle. And so in 2019, there was one growing season after the rough and loose treatment And it took about 50 staff hours to treat the bull thistle in that area. 2020, after 2 growing seasons, it was almost 100 staff hours. And then this year, after 3 growing seasons, we only had 5 staff hours of effort go into controlling the bull thistle. And part of this is because there's grass cover that's grown in around the rough and loose area, so choking out the bull thistle a bit. There are also large patches of invasive species that were there before, so blackberry and English hawthorn. And for these really large patches, we don't have the resources to eradicate them, so we're just focusing on preventing spread into the rough and loose areas. And for monitoring, we have, or we're hoping to monitor annually for 10 years after the establishment of the weir. We monitor from late May to early June, and we have 3 different types of monitoring. The first one are plot type A's. These are looking at the impacts of the deer fence. And so we have paired plots with 1 plot inside the deer fence and 1 plot outside. And we're looking at photo monitoring, looking at plant species, canopy cover, and total percent cover in each of the plots. For our type B monitoring, it's photo monitoring. So we're looking at the effects of the deer exclusion, the rough and loose soil treatment, and planting through repeat photography. Okay, so in our plot C, we have monitoring to detect changes in wetland vegetation in the wet area of the wetland. So there we're looking at the results of deer exclusion and of drainage reduction thanks to the weir. So we're doing repeat photography there, as well as percent cover for the plant species, and also looking at the water depth in these areas. We also have some really exciting changes happening in the vegetation communities. So we have the recovery of native shrubs that were suppressed before. In the dry sites, we have snowberry and Nootka rose that have really rebounded now that there's no deer browse happening on them. And we also have in the wet sites pink spirea, like the one pictured here, that was previously bulldozed, but now that the soils have been decompacted, it's really bouncing back as well. And Rob, I'll pass it back to you.
Sure. So we'll wrap it up for now. It's been a really great project to work on so far. Tons of learning opportunities, and yeah, I'm sure there's a wealth of knowledge with the participants in this wetland workshop program. So I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone in person and watching the recordings of your projects. So hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see some of you soon.
Looking forward to meeting you.
Bye.